Hello, art historians. We are back with our next round of Southeast and Southeast Asia. When I saw you last, we did the art of India, and now we're going to skip ahead to the art of China. And we're going to cover a whole lot of time periods here with China, and it's going to take us a couple of videos to do all of China. So we're going to start with the terracotta warriors from the mausoleum of the first Qin emperor of China. And so hopefully you're hearing that, Qin. That's how that Qin is pronounced Qin. And that's where the name China comes from, is actually from Emperor Qin. Qin Shuangji is how his whole name would have been pronounced. And he is really the first emperor. He was a military genius. I mean, an absolute genius. And what he does is he modernizes and consolidates a bunch of much smaller, I guess, city-states into a vast empire. And so why do I say, I guess, city-states? Because that's typically a term we use to describe ancient Greece, but, it works here too. So Emperor Qin was a skilled warrior. He had military prowess. He was, what's the word I want? Ruthless. That's the word I want. It took me a minute to find just the right negative word to describe him. So he was considered just a ruthless leader. If he wanted to conquer something, do something, whatever, it was going to happen, or he was probably going to kill you. And so, when we're looking at this, terracotta warriors, you've probably seen these. These are incredibly famous. And the word mausoleum, I'm pretty sure we've done that before. But just as a refresher, a mausoleum is a building, especially a very large one, that is used to house a tomb, of someone famous. So Emperor Qin is famous for taking all these small city-states in China and compacting them or consolidating them into the vast, what becomes Chinese empire that he names for himself. And as I said, he was pretty ruthless in doing this. And so we're looking at, this consolidation, but also a cool modernization in that he modernizes China with a standardized currency, a standardized written language, a standardized unit of measure, which makes trade significantly more positive when you're using a standardized measurement. He builds roads. He himself doesn't. He has people that build roads and canals. It is under the Emperor Qin that we have the beginning of the Great Wall of China. Please excuse my yawning. We just had daylight savings time, so I lost an hour and I'm a little sleepy. So when we're looking at this tomb, what you're seeing is part of the largest mausoleum ever. Because what you're looking at is a mausoleum that first has this collection of these statues. There are more than 8,000 of these statues. They are 6 feet tall, taller than the average person of that time. And what you have to understand about the Emperor Qin is he really believed that he could the same way that he conquered his enemies, he believed that he could conquer death. But he also believed that if he were to die, that when he got into the afterlife, there's the belief that that you would, in the afterlife, also then have to face those that you wronged or injured in the real life. And so really he was afraid that with all of the slaughter and massacring that he did to unify a single China, he was really afraid that he was going to run into all of these people that he killed in the afterlife. And so he needed an army to protect him. And so we're going to scroll to the next slide here. And here you see a few of these terracotta. So the same way that the sarcophagus of the spouses was made from terracotta, we see these terracotta warriors. There are, as I said, more than 8,000 of them. There were also things other than warriors. There you see some terracotta horses, because if you're going to have terracotta warriors, you're going to need terracotta chariots, and you're going to need terracotta horses to pull your terracotta chariots. And what's interesting is the majority of the body shapes are similar, but very interesting and very coolly, the faces are all different. And then the actual body is then adapted more to fit its job. What do I mean by that? So you're looking at, these are, standing warriors. I'm going to, and here's your theme, to commemorate a ruler or works that were buried, lost, and then refound. Okay. And so here you see some of them would have had spears. Some of them would have had basically the arrows, bows and arrows, but the ones that were what we call a compound bow, so that you can sort of shoot it almost like a gun. And you see they go for like all this whole distance, and they were all buried to march into the next life and to protect the emperor in the afterlife. So you see here our archers, our spearmen. Some of them would have had swords. They each have different faces. They each have different hair. Some of them have different uniforms to depict where they are. We have children and acrobats. There are animals and horses and chariots. There are weapons and armor. Actually over 30,000 actual weapons. So he wanted these guys, when they get to the afterlife, to have weapons to protect him with as well. There are vessels to hold liquid and food. There's jewelry. There's gold and silver. And this is only part of the mausoleum complex. And this is sort of the thing that we have to really think that is very cool. When Qin became emperor, and he was brilliant from a young age. And so he became emperor when he was 13 and already was like a strategic genius. And so he began building this this mausoleum complex when he became emperor at the age of 13. And so when he builds them, there's got to be a plan to how do you accomplish all of this. And so you're looking at the work of almost 1 million laborers. And you're looking at the requirement for a ton of huge kilns. Look how large these are. And you're looking at skilled workers that would be able to create these statues and the different faces and the different hair and change the body shape. And you can see that some of the body shapes appear similar. You have the hands in front of you, hands holding a spear, but each one of the faces and hair is different. And so it required an investment in the production of art. It became basically literally like a BCE assembly line where you would make sort of the legs, and then you would make the torso and the face, and the bodies were roughly the same shape, but then they were changed, maybe the arms or the feet depending on their job, and then they were painted, and I'm going to show you that in a second, to reflect what they were doing. And so this is a huge, gigantic undertaking. There is also a representation of, as I said, acrobats and animals. There's representations of gardens and stables. This is a whole complex here built simply for the people that would be protecting the emperor in the afterlife. What is interesting is the mausoleum where his body actually lies has not been excavated. And the reason that it hasn't been excavated is Qin wanted to defeat death. And one of the things that he thought was really cool and might help him to defeat death was liquid mercury. You all are too young to have experienced this, but people my age, when we were younger, we didn't have electronic thermometers. We had the thermometers that had mercury in them. And when they broke, the mercury would just sort of swirl around in little, it would become almost spherical, little spheres of mercury, and they would sort of roll around. And there was something sort of magical about this silver mercury. And the emperor became fascinated with it. He actually ingested some of the mercury, probably why he died a little earlier than he might have. And when he died, he had plans for his body to be put into a mausoleum a little bit down the road from where this is, where the entire ceiling looks like the sky, and the stars in the sky. It's meant to look like the night sky, and the stars in the sky are all jewels. The problem is, and the reason that it's never been excavated, is that the water in his mausoleum where his body is all liquid mercury. And so we don't, as a society, really feel like we have the ability to excavate the emperor's tomb yet. But that doesn't mean that we don't get to see the really cool stuff that's here, which is, you get to see the archers and the chariots and the charioteers and just the standard soldiers, and it goes and goes and goes and goes and goes and goes. Now, when you're looking at this, you're going to see that they're each painted a little bit differently. Their faces are a little bit different. There are thousands of them. And how do you make all of these things, including a tomb that has liquid mercury for water, that's filled with jewels and gold and silver and all of this stuff, and how do you do this and have it be hidden until it was discovered in 1974, hidden and lost until 1974. And how do you do that? Well, after the emperor is placed in the mausoleum, all of the people who built parts of this and things like that, they were all killed to keep things secret. And so you have all these really cool birds and sheep and goats and all kinds of cool things. Lots of different paint colors. Each of the paints is made out of pigments, is made from specific chemicals. And so the terracotta warriors are really known for being just an amazing undertaking artistically. And also the idea of how many of them we have intact. And there is still excavation in process now, because as you can see, there are all of these areas, and they're not all excavated yet. So the excavation continues because it really hasn't even been 50 years since they were uncovered. And so this is thousands of pieces, and so it's really cool to know that that's still a work in progress. Okay, our next piece in China is a piece of painted silk. And you should probably know that silk is, I think I've said this before, one of the hardest things to conserve. and to restore. And so the fact that this is painted on silk is they're very difficult to conserve. So this is the funeral banner of Lady Di, and that's how you would have said her name. The rest of her name is Jin Shui. So Jin, the Xin would be pronounced Jin, like the gin, the cotton gin, the drink, and Shui, S like Sui, like Schwee, like so Jin Shui. So she was, and you'll see this on your vocabulary list. She was a marquis, and so her husband is a marquis. She is the wife of a marquis. That makes her a marquis. And so when she died, she is given an elaborate burial that included this tapestry painted silk thing banner being placed on top of her tomb. So I'm just going to, this is your only image that's required, but I'm going to scroll through and show you, this is basically what they found. They found her body with this funeral banner on top of it under several sarcophagi under earth. So she and her funeral banner were incredibly well preserved. Excuse me, I think I've said this a million times. I have terrible allergies and having a hard time. So when you're looking at this, you're looking at the funeral banner that would have been placed on top of her sarcophagus. It's over 6 feet long, so it would have clearly been longer than her actual coffin. And it's T-shaped because they're accomplishing certain things in registers, like the standard of ore and things like that are split into registers. This story is told in registers. This actually contains the earliest example of a Chinese portrait, like painted to be a portrait of someone. That we have in existence. It also shows a very early example of both pictorial art, so art that is pictures, and sort of iconographic shapes and things like that. So when I look at this, I want you to see, 6 foot 8 inches long from top to bottom, and then 3 feet wide at the arms, and a foot and a half at the bottom. And then I want you to see that it says Han Dynasty. And the Han Dynasty is one of the more famous dynasties, and it is China's second imperial dynasty. And so this is a really important thing because she is married to the Marquis of Dai in the Hunan province. And you can see this is the Hunan, this is the Hunan province here. And they were very wealthy, and there are lots of grave goods to accompany both of them into the afterlife. And this was discovered in 1972, her tomb, along with the tomb of her husband and their son. And so because it was preserved for so long and kept intact, there are lots of things. There were eating utensils, there were textiles, there's jewelry, there were food and various other things down there with them. And so what you're looking at really is a representation of, again, this idea that you would be going into the afterlife and you would need to take some things with you. There are lots of really cool images here, and I'm going to just scroll a little. I'm going to scroll a little bit and show them to you. Okay, so we have the bird, and this is the heavenly realm up here at the top. So we have this bird, we have the snake, we have dragons. The dragons are the symbol for immortality. And so we have dragons up here. And when we're looking at this, we see that this is the heavenly realm at the top. And so it sort of cuts off at these arm area. And the red sun and the raven refers to a traditional story of the 10 sons. So we're looking at early iconographic depictions of things that would have been common understanding. So the sun and the raven is like a folk tale of the 10 sons. Here you see, this is the sun, this is the moon and the frog. That's also a folk tale that is popular. And then when you get into sort of the larger depiction of the piece, and here's your themes: textiles, so like the tunic from oh, it's going to come to me in a second. The Aztec and Mayan tunics and things like that, and then also funerary materials. So anything that we have that's funerary to promote or to prepare for the afterlife. Now, what's interesting is you're going to see that. I'm going to scroll back some, and you're going to see that we're broken into the registers. The heavenly realm, there's that bird, frog, dragons, okay? Then we see Lady Dai and her attendants. And again, this is that depiction of the earliest Chinese portrait. It's Lady Dai, Jin Shui, with 5 of her ladies' maids. And this is, as I said, the earliest portrait that we have in existence. I'm going to scroll so that you can actually see it. And here you have Lady Dai, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of her attendants. Okay. So this is an important art historical piece. Okay. Then when we get into the pieces of it, and there she is, Lady Dai. And then you get into, we see the body of Lady Dai being laid out and there being mourners. And then we see the underworld down here. So we see the story being told in several pieces. And so I'm going to scroll again. So you see, here's the body of Lady Dai, and here are all of these monsters, right, that are trying to push up on the floor of the world or the ceiling of the underworld. And she is being kept out by the mourners who are watching over her body. She is being kept out of, and here we have again, there are all these monsters and things, and she is being kept out of this horrific, terrible underworld by all of these people that are mourning her, so that she can then rise up here and be part of the heavenly realm. There's lots of depictions of things that are opposites from each other. Here is where we get the early example of the yin and the yang, the two halves of these monsters here in that yin and yang position. And so as is described to you in your vocabulary, yin and yang is these two opposite things that play off of each other, is the Chinese philosophy of like duality, things that have two things, and how things that seem to be opposite of each other are interconnected with each other, and how those two things work together to create whatever it is they're creating, and that in the natural world there are lots of things that appear to be opposite of each other that are complementary. And so that's why you see this red and the black, and you see these two monsters at the bottom that are intertwined but also going in the opposite direction. And so we are introduced to an early concept of the Chinese philosophy of yin and yang. Now, I also want to show you one other thing when I'm looking at the portrait of Lady Dai, which is an attempt at perspective. We see an early attempt at perspective in Chinese art in the way that the attendants are lined up next to each other so that you can clearly tell that one is further in the back than the other. And so this is a really interesting piece in that it's for a woman and not for a man, because a lot of our early art is created for men, and this is created for a woman. It's important because it's silk, and it's rare that these things have existed. We see early iconography, dragons, the moon, the sun, that sort of thing. We see, again, a use of registers, and finally, an attempt at perspective. And so it's a really significant and important piece. We're going to move now to our third image for today, which is the Longmen caves. And we're going to talk a little bit about these caves. These are the Liang, that's how you would say that, Liang caves in Liang, China, the Longmen caves in Liang, China. And they're created they're begun during the Wei dynasty, WEI, and then they're continued during the Tang dynasty. And the reason that the College Board doesn't really give you the Wei dynasty is because they built just a little tiny piece of it at the early portion in that in that 493 area. But over 70% of or close to 70%, I'm sorry, of the whole complex was created by the Tang dynasty, because the Wei dynasty began doing construction, and they spent so much money on the construction that they actually almost bankrupted the entire country. And so the Tang dynasty takes over and does a better job of getting workers, and doing the construction in a way that is able to be constructed without bankrupting and hurting the dynasty. So the majority of the credit goes to the Tang dynasty, but we do have to think a little bit about the fact that it was begun under the Wei dynasty, WEI. And why would a construction bankrupt an entire people? Guys, this is a huge complex, huge. So it's made out of limestone. It's cut into the walls. It should make you think a little bit of the Bamenyan Buddha, because you can see those little entrances in the walls. Buddhism came to China from India in the first century CE, right? So somewhere between 10, 12, and through 100. And so, Buddhism is still a little bit young in China at this point when construction is started. Liang is the ancient capital of China. And so that is why we have this huge construction here. Most of these caves and Buddhas were created between the end of the 5th century, so 493, through the middle of the 8th century, so through like 900. There's a much smaller amount of construction from about 900 to 1127. There are a total of, and this is why we start to understand how we could bankrupt a nation. There are 2,300 caves that stretch for over a mile in length on both sides of the river. Okay, so you see these sort of caves and the Buddha there. And this complex of these caves and Buddhas stretches for over a mile on both sides. There are, in the caves and in the construction around them, more than 110,000 statues of the Buddha. There are more than 60 stupas, so burial mounds with ashes in them. There are more than 2,800 steles, or those tall, markers. There are lots of things that are carved into the existing rock. We go from having things that are like literally colossally, gigantic to things that are very small. The majority of this would have been painted. So think about your terracotta warriors, a lot of painting, particularly in blues and reds. And in the places inside the caves where there aren't statues, there are bas reliefs carved into the wall. So this is a huge undertaking. And when you're looking at it, you have to think about the idea that the construction is believed to have taken more than 800,000 workers. And so you're looking at a gigantic complex where most of the statues are dedicated to the Buddha. A good portion of the financing when the Tang come into power comes from Empress Wu Zetian, because she uses her own money to help finance the building of the caves and the construction of the Buddhas. And so when we begin to have the introduction of non-national money, it goes a little easier. So I know I hit you with a bunch of facts. So I'm going to scroll forward for a second, and I'm going to let you see this. So the caves stretch for over a mile on both sides. there are 2,300, more than 2,300 caves. There are more than 110,000 statues of the Buddha. There's more than 60 stupas and more than 2,800 steles. So when you're looking at that, you're looking at lots of different depictions of the Buddha, lots and lots and lots and lots of them. And so, and the Buddha is in different, different arrangements. Okay. So I'm going to talk to you about some of the things that we're looking at here. Okay. So we're going to go, this is just one of the, this is the central Binyan cave. This is Liang. Okay. So this is the central cave. And why I bring you this picture is you can see all the paintings, you can see the small statues, you can see this image of the Buddha. This is not one of your required images, but I want you, here's the hand down and the hand up, the blessing and teaching. Okay, and then I'm gonna scroll you to this. This is the main Buddha, the largest Buddha. It's the central, that he's sometimes called the central Buddha. He's called the Vairocana Buddha. I'm gonna it's on your vocabulary sheet. And a Vairocana Buddha simply means the universal Buddha, the Buddha that is like, he's just sitting here, he has his hands in the meditative position, and he's just sort of like that Buddha that, can just sort of teach. The Vairocana Buddha is considered to be the enlightened Buddha, right? He's already accomplished enlightenment. But what I want you really to think about is I'm going to show you some other people that are around the Buddha because we have not talked about them. Here you see him clearly a monk. And then I want to show you all of these statues that are around the Buddha. Okay. And what you're looking at this is called a bodhisattva. Okay. Bodhisattva. Okay. And a bodhisattva is a person who has achieved enlightenment and is able to achieve nirvana, but doesn't. Not because they did anything wrong, but because they're able to achieve nirvana and they stay as earthly beings to help more people achieve enlightenment. So a bodhisattva is like a really big, important person. Here's all these monks, right, that are there helping and attending to the Buddha. And we see this is a guardian figure. We're going to see more of these when we do Japan. And then you can see some of these other figures that are around, and these are these bodhisattvas, these figures that can go into nirvana, but don't. They wait so that they can help others achieve nirvana. So they are capable, they have reached enlightenment, are capable of entering the state of nirvana, but they hold off on their entrance into nirvana to help others. So that's what we're looking at with these Longmen caves. We're looking at an artistic construction that literally almost bankrupted a nation. So you get your long shot there of some of the caves with the large Buddha. Your second one is the guardian figure and bodhisattvas. And then your third figure is the large main Buddha and more bodhisattvas. Okay. So those are your images. And you can see all the bas relief, the low relief that's back there decorating the mandorla, the halo behind all of them. I just, I pulled this picture. It gives for scale. It shows you sort of the peaceful expression of the Buddha, and it shows you the complexity of the bas relief that surrounds the Buddha. All right. So then we're going to go to the last one for this recording, and then we'll do another recording when we're done with this one. For China, China is going to take two. This is called Travelers Among Mountains and Streams. This is again silk, so ink and colors on silk. It's very faded. It's very old. When you're looking at it, it's it's from the year 1000. And so we're looking at a very old piece of silk. And so you're looking at a piece that is 6'10" long, almost 3.5 wide. And you're looking at a piece that is constructed in the belief of Confucianism. And Confucianism is a belief that was like sort of teaching that was started by Confucius, who is a philosopher. And Confucius talked about the importance of having good moral character, and also that the better you are as a human being, the more positivity you put out around you, and your goodness can then add to the goodness around you, which helps to achieve cosmic harmony. And one of the ways you help to achieve cosmic harmony is by honoring nature and seeing the truth and the power in nature and protecting nature. So in this idea of Confucianism, there's the idea that you must be good, that your goodness adds to the goodness of the world, and that in your being good, you must be aware of the power and importance of nature. And so this piece is very philosophical. Fan Quan becomes a major influence for most of our later Japanese and Chinese artists. He uses a collection of different brushes to give us different effects of different trees. Fan Quan is known for being an influence on a lot of very important artists, but this is believed to be the only existing surviving work of his. So it's a really big deal. A lot of artists talk about Fan Quan and his influence on them. A lot of artists spoke about the importance of Fan Quan's art to their own art. And so I need you to understand sort of the importance of this artist to other artists, to then the chain of both Chinese and Japanese art, and to the idea of painting with nature. Or of nature. He isolated himself away from civilization to be with nature and to study it. In Chinese belief, mountains are sacred places. And there is a belief in Confucianism that the immortals live in the mountains. And so what you're looking at is, here's your mountains, lots of rocks. There's streams here. I'm going to show you some close-ups. And the water that comes here down this waterfall and into the stream creates this beautiful mist. It at the very center, not the center, but at the bottom, sort of off in the middle of like teeny, so tiny, are two men driving a team of donkeys that are loaded with firewood. This is really important. Look how big the mountains are, and the waterfall, and the trees, and the rocks. And you almost forget that this is called travelers. So there are people here, right? But they're they're not important, right? So let's scroll forward and look at travelers among the mountains and streams. So this is a compacted version of it. What do I mean? So see how long this is? This is sort of like shrinks it. And it's sort of a modernized version. So you get these beautiful waterfalls. You can see sort of some of these peaks about here and here. There's another peak there. There's another peak here. Here you see some more of the streams. There's actually a temple. You can see the temple here, and you can see the men with their donkeys. Okay. And this is not a to scale reproduction, but it does a really good job of showing you what you're looking at. This is what is here is lost, is this beautiful mist that comes up. So you're looking at your theme of landscape, and then I'm going to look at like this kind of tree with the pokey branches, and then this that looks more like a cedar tree, and this that looks more like fluffy trees, right? So you have different kinds of trees. I think I covered professional painter, the only one, monochromatic. Okay, nature, trying to protect. All right. All right, so I covered most of that. So when we get down into this part, this is a picture of the original, not the compressed one, but you see the beauty of the donkeys here. You see these great trees, right, which is in contrast to these great trees. You see the beautiful construction of the temple here. And then it says travelers among the mountains and streams. And here you have your stream here that comes down and creates this really beautiful visual aspect. I'm sorry, I'm going the wrong way. So I'm going to just scroll a little bit and see here. You see these really beautiful, the way that your eye follows the stream, boop, 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 and how it changes as the water flows through it. So we go down and over and down and over. And so it's a really beautiful construction, and it's we're really looking at just it's just stunning. And as I said, it is he is the inspiration and source of instruction for many of our other featured artists. So that is China video number 1. We have some more of China to do. We're going to break that into another video, and I'm going to leave you with this image of the travelers among mountains and streams, and I will see you again next time. Bye, guys.